Hello and welcome to the Real Life Sports Show. This podcast is for sports fans and people playing sport. Anyone interested in sport, basically, whether that's watching it, playing it, or competing at any level. My name is Sam Adams. I'm known as the Real Life Coach. I'm a business owner and a life coach who works with sports professionals, whether that's athletes, coaches, and people in and around the sporting industry. And I help those people live more expansively, authentically, so that they can enhance their performance, whether that's playing their game or living their real life. My background is business, really. I've been in business for over 20 years in property, and I've mentored in that industry and coached. And that led me into life coaching, and then that led me into working with people in sport. Basically, because I'm passionate about sport. In this podcast, we're going to be talking about the hot topics in sport. We're going to talk about the real life behind the scenes, what it takes to be a professional athlete. We're going to have the latest news. We're going to have some discussions. I'm also going to share with you my experiences of coaching elite athletes. We will have some amazing guests, and they will be talking about the glamour and the glory, the medals, the achievements, the titles. But we'll also go behind the scenes to find out what it really takes, the grit and the grind, what it takes to excel as an elite athlete. For yourself, the listener, what I promise you is that you're going to get some great takeaways and insight from these podcast episodes. Whether you're looking to achieve or improve your mindset, it'll help you with your personal development, and it will give you that extra bit of insight and what it takes to be a high achiever. Also, I'd love for you to do me a big favour when you get to the end of this episode, or any episode, is leave a review. Leave me a 5-star review and I will be eternally grateful. So here we go, the Real Life Sports Show. So everybody, yes, this is another episode in the new podcast. It might not be new by the time you're listening to this, but the Real Life Sports Show with me, Sam Adams. And today, I'm super excited. To be honest with you, whenever I do this, I'm super excited because I think I get to speak to people that I never dreamed I'd ever be having conversations with. And that's what's great about podcasting. And today is no exception. I'm speaking to a Rugby World Cup winner, no other. And I know him as Coach G, but you might know him as Gurthrö Steenkamp. Good afternoon. Well, it's good afternoon for me. How are you doing, Gurthrö?
Good afternoon to you too. Get a touch, boom.
We got a touch.
Now, good to be. I'm excited. Yeah, got to do that. We need to stay connected. Yeah, so for people always hearing that's a virtual high five, get a touch is what we use in Zoom, just for people to stay connected and just to acknowledge each other. Yeah, I'm super excited. I love going on podcasts. All right, I get amped up. Feels like I'm about to play a rugby game. No, I'm joking. I just like to share my passion and share my story, and hopefully my message out there can help some people.
Awesome. I love that. And I obviously connected with you over on Clubhouse, this amazing new audio app that we're all using and showing up in. And I heard you speaking in there and your energy and your story. And most importantly, I guess for me, the message, because I'm a life coach to sports professionals and I just love what you're doing. And I think that was why I was like, I've got to get this guy on my podcast just to have a little bit more of that energy and understand where it comes from and how you keep going like you do. But obviously, we have to talk about, the rugby. Your career in rugby, because those who are listening might not know it. I obviously know it. I remember you guys beating England to win the World Cup. That was gutting. So tell me firstly then, how did you get into rugby? Was it a family tradition? What happened?
Actually, my dad was a footballer, all right? So he was a footballer and he was a football coach. And I used to play football till the age of 12. And then I changed schools in Paarl, in this little town outside of Cape Town. And I got stopped by the first team coach, the rugby coach. And he said to me, son, do you play rugby? I'm like, no, coach, I play football. He's like, from today, you won't be playing football anymore. You'll be playing rugby. I'm like, yes, coach. I was scared of him. So I started playing rugby. I had no idea how it works. I was just running all over the place, scrum off, fly off. And they're like, you were freaking locked. Stay there. So it was by chance. There are some of my family members that play I had an uncle that played at the highest level back in the day,
Right.
in the apartheid era of South Africa, all right, but wasn't really acknowledged for that. So, playing rugby I was one of the first in my family really to play it, because being a predominantly football family. And, I just fell in love with the sport, and what it represented, having that camaraderie, being part of a great team environment. And also I liked smashing people. So that was kind of cool as well.
Where did that come? Were you an angry kid or anything? Was it?
No, that I was just a big kid. I wasn't really fat. I was just full. Right. All right. So yeah. I wasn't fat. I was just full. I was just big.
Big guy.
And no, I won't say anger. It's just like I had this energy about me, and I fell in love with the sport. And at the age of 16, I realized that I could actually go all the way with it, because I could see the results and also the interest that was starting to build up around me. Mm-hmm. And I remember back then, my dad actually asked me and said, "Son, are you serious about rugby? Do you really want to go all the way? Are you willing to do what is necessary?" And I used that word, "Are you willing to do what is necessary to achieve your goals?" Mm. I said, "Yes." He said, "Okay." And I was like, "Good, okay, yes." Next day, he woke me up at 5:30 a.m. and he said, "Right, you're going to go for a run before school." And I was like, "Okay, all right." 3 kilometers, went jogging, went going, and, go to school, had my rugby training. And then my dad would come pick me up. And I remember this day, he came and said like, "Okay, give me your bag." I'm like, "Yeah, sure." Okay, about to get in the car or the pickup. And he said, "No, you're running home." I'm like, "But Dad, it's like 7 to 8 kilometers. Like, you said you're serious." I'm like, "Okay." There I went, running back home. So I would run like almost 8 kilometers a day. And the great thing about that story is that taught me a lot of things. I was mad at him, but like I trusted him. He was not someone that was over pushy. He wasn't someone that was living vicariously through me. He was just there in support.
Yeah.
He wouldn't like after each game overanalyze and criticize and stuff like that. He was really there to support me. He would just say, "Are you willing to do what is necessary? Yeah. Are you willing to put in the work?" And I did that. And I've got so many stories about that. But doing by running, I would run on my own. And even when I played at the elite levels, like under 18 South Africa, under 20, I would still run in the community, and people would get to know me as this big guy on the side of the road, just running, In my mind, I was going fast, but actually I was just going really slow. And that helped me because I went to uni. I went 1,500 kilometers away from home. No, actually 1,000 kilometers. I'm over-exaggerating now. 1,000 kilometers away from him. Went out of my comfort zone. Mama's boy, left home, all those type of things, left the crib. And my dad sent me to uni without a car, without a bicycle. And he said, "I'm not going to buy you one. God has given you a pair of feet and you should use it." And I had to run to training every day, 3.5 kilometers. So when I would get to training, we would start training with fitness, and I already did 3.5 days. But what he installed in me was work ethic. And even though I had the opportunity to hitch a ride or lift with teammates, I refused. Because my dad said, "You get to training on your own."
Yeah.
And those type of things that help me in just using what you have and making the best of it. All right. We're always looking for a lot of external things to boost us and to help us, but it starts with the internal. But we'll get into detail about that later.
It's all inside out. Talk about that a lot. I was talking to Jan Yulfai, the ex-Microsoft guy who now coaches athletes and Olympians, and we had a great discussion really about that very thing. It's all inside out job, and and that's why I love having these conversations with people like yourself to see what it took and what it takes. And I guess for you were kind of lucky because you had your dad, who you obviously really respected, who wasn't necessarily overly pushy, but very supportive and believed in your ability from day one, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, definitely. I was very lucky. I know that's not the case with everyone, and that's why I've almost been in fights with parents before, because in South Africa, to give you a bit of background, rugby in South Africa is like a religion.
Yeah.
All right. We always hear that there were two countries, all right, with two nations that were born to play each other, and that was South Africa and New Zealand.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, England.
I know. We know it though. We know it. Don't worry.
I grew up with that. I had this dream of playing against the All Blacks.
Yeah.
That drove me. But I would also say when I was older, when I was a professional player, I would go watch schoolboy rugby and stuff like that. I would see parents at the 10-year-old child shouting and screaming, "You useless, you rubbish." And I would go to these parents like, "What are you doing?" Yeah. It's like, "Oh, but he had a bad game." I was like, "He's freaking 10 years old.
Yeah.
Let him just have fun. Let him be a kid." "Yeah, but if he doesn't perform now, he'll never be a professional." I'm like, whoa, stop the bus. All right. That's his decision to make one day if he's going to be a professional rugby player. And he's only 10. He doesn't know.
Yeah.
I've seen players at the age of 18, they've made that decision and they still don't make it. So I said, don't burn your bridges. Don't pollute your relationship with your child because you want him to be a professional.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of things around the game. South Africa, there's a lot of pressure around rugby, and we see it in schools. There's a lot of topics we can talk about.
Yeah, there is, a lot of countries do have their national game. Here football is huge. The money and involved in football in this country, in the Premier League, and it's incredible. We love our rugby, but football is really the biggest sport we have here, and each country I think has their own national sport, as it were, and there's a lot of pressure on kids to play football and to be at the elite level. But what people forget is that actually in any sport, like in rugby, football, whatever, to be at the top of the game, to be like you are, to play for your nation, to win a World Cup, it's the smallest amount of people the 1%, less than that probably, that actually make it to the pinnacle. And it's so small, but you can still have a good career and not be playing at the absolute peak. But there is a lot of pressure.
Yeah, just to give you an example, I was in a boys' school. We were 700 kids, all right, and it's one of the top rugby schools in South Africa. It's called Paul Boys High, and it's a proper private school. You have to wear your blazer. You have to stand up when an adult comes past you. You have to button your blazer. It can't be opened up with tie, and it's really like proper traditions. And I was the only one out of my senior class that played professional rugby.
Yeah. And
they were great players, but I was the only one out of 80 elite kids that played. All right. And in rugby, we had two teams, first teams, all right, with players that probably had the potential to go professional. And I was the only one out of a pool of about 70 players.
Yeah.
So, and that's a reality. That's what I tell to younger players. I tell them, guys, you want to play professional, fine. But don't take the easy route with your studies by just doing a sports management course or this and that. I studied law. Unfortunately, one of my biggest regrets, and I'm not ashamed that I regret it, I never completed my degree. Because at the stage, it became too much. I missed exams, became a professional player. I made that choice.
Yeah.
In hindsight, looking back, there was probably a way. I could have caught up eventually because then online learning came into play, but I was just comfortable focusing on rugby. So I advise players, get a proper education. It's so important because like that, injuries, and with the modern game and in any sport, the pressure to perform, everything, the standards is raising every single year, whether it's football, whether it's rugby or cricket, the standards is raising every single year. And that pressure to perform is getting so much more. And we're seeing injuries. We're seeing players that are just losing their stuff mentally because the pressure is just too much. So you need to have something you can fall back on.
Yeah. The pressure is huge. I think, I did a workshop to some footballers not that long ago, and we were talking about identity, because obviously when you're a professional athlete, it's very easy to get wrapped up in your identity as an athlete and forget the other aspects of life and the other interests that you might well have. And like you say, because of injuries can end your career like that. You might get dropped, your performance drops or whatever. That's why it's so important to have these other areas and aspects of your life that you're interested in and that you can, give some of your attention to. Because if you're just an athlete and you see yourself as just an athlete, if that's gone tomorrow for injury or whatever, what are you left with? This is what I said to the lads on Monday. It's like, what are you left with if all you see yourself is as an athlete? Fucking nothing. And that's where problems really
Yeah.
then can kick in.
I just want to clarify, I help players and just everyday people develop mental resilience. That I'm a rugby coach as well, all right? But I help people develop mental resilience and also figuring out, you were talking about identity. I always ask athletes this question: who are you without the sport which you love, which you're passionate about? Who are you? What are your interests? What can you contribute to the conversation? What topics can you talk about? I found myself in a lost after rugby. I would go to a rugby game. I was no longer playing. So when you're an athlete and when you are performing or when you're playing, people come, oh, that was awesome. Great stuff. Wow. How did you do that? Great. When you stop playing, they're like, oh, so what do you think of the game? I'm like, oh, no, it was great. It was awesome. So what do you do now? I'm a coach, or I'm trying to be a coach. Okay, cool. Then they start talking about their jobs.
Yeah.
So like, all right, I had to hit this targets this month. Oh, and crazy. HR is killing me because they said I spoke harshly to my employees. And I'm just like, what to say? Can you guys come back to rugby, please? and and I was lost. I felt like an idiot. I felt stupid.
Yeah.
And I had to upskill myself on different topics and asking questions. And this is simple. So I said, listen here, I'm a rugby player. Tell me a bit more about yourself. What do you do?
Yeah.
Educate me. And that became my entry point. That's how I learned all these different things. Yeah. And that big thing, identity. Who are you when you're done playing?
Yeah.
And people struggle with that. And I've seen players and athletes, they've got jobs lined up. They've got a business waiting for them. But they can't deal with who they are when they are retired.
Yeah, no, it's
they've lost that sense of purpose.
Yeah.
And that's so important. You need to figure out who you are without the sport that you love.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. That's a big part of stuff that I do with clients is, one of the questions I always ask them is, who do you think you are? Who do you really think you are? And it's very interesting. I mean, we probably could talk about that stuff all day. I want to continue on the rugby journey because, obviously, like 16, you realise you got pretty serious with it. Your dad helped you. Was it that at sort of 16 that you realised for yourself that, yes, I could be an international rugby player, I could play for the Springboks? Was there like a realisation for you, or...?
I wouldn't say at that stage I realized I could be an international player. I realized that I could become a professional player. Obviously, I had a dream. I wanted to play for South Africa. I always remember the age of 13, watching South Africa winning the World Cup for the first time, Nelson Mandela, and seeing how everybody united, and taking from where I come from, being a person of color in South Africa, that's huge. My parents experienced the apartheid era, and that was massive. I'm just getting goosebumps talking about that now.
Me too.
And that age, eh? At the age of, we're going to get emotional here on this podcast.
Let's get it.
At the age of 13, I had this dream. I want to become a Springbok. I want to be that person that someone looks up to, that can inspire. And so obviously I went through all the grassroots, went through the age grades and all those type of things. But at the age of 16, I knew there was potential. That's when I made a switch. So my next target was to play for the first team. And I eventually did. I played 2 years for my first team at Paul Boys High. And then massive interest came in, offers coming in for me to go to different clubs, or franchises, as we call it in South Africa. But the main thing was that I had to study. And discussing with my parents, we felt it would be best that I go far away from home, just to get out of the comfort zone. I needed to grow up. I was a mama's boy. All right. I'm not ashamed to say that. Even now, living in France, when my mom comes to visit, it's so awesome because they're like, son, you look tired. Go for a nap. I'm like, yes, mom. Yeah. I'm gonna go for a nap. And I could see my missus like, oh, he needs to work. He needs to work. So yes, when I went to uni and I went through all the different levels, played SA under 19. There I realized this could become a reality. I made the SA under 21 team 2 years in a row, and I was coached by Jake White at age 21, who became the Springbok coach. So then I knew, okay, I could possibly make it. But I got sidetracked as well, being a youngster away from his parents, enjoying put it this way. I went to university in a town called Bloemfontein. There's nothing. There's nothing. There's not even, there's a dam. That's it. The grass is yellow in winter. It's hard. And there's nothing. I don't have to explain it. I can't even tell you what happens in that town because it's nothing. But when I got in, I used to coming from Cape Town, the ocean, Table Mountain, all these great places, and going to nothing. It was a big adjustment. And my coach, when I arrived, he said to me, son, I know you're asking yourself a lot of questions now, but let me tell you this. People that come to Bloemfontein, they cry on 2 occasions. It's the day when they arrive, and they're like, what the hell am I doing here? And the day when they leave. And it was the truth. It was the absolute truth. And there was nothing to do in this town. So what did we do? We had a braai, which you guys know is a barbecue.
Yeah, I love braai.
We would go out. Yeah. And there were times that I got sidetracked. And I had my 2 best friends, and you need to understand this as well. Bloemfontein's a small place, all right? So there was a Greek community, there was a Portuguese community, brilliant. And there was a lot of them. I had 2 Greek friends, all right? So, and their friends, they were running this town. And they actually blocked me at all the clubs and all the so-called bars. I wasn't allowed access. They said, G, you need to stop your BS. Because you are throwing your future away.
Amazing.
And if they didn't do that,
good friends.
Good, and we're still best friends today.
Yeah.
Those same friends that had me arrested the day before my wedding, as a prank, but we're still friends. Yeah, no, it's a prank. It's just a prank. But yeah, and I realized then that wake-up call that I could achieve great things, but I knew I had some hard work waiting for me. And that happened in 2003, and end of 2004, I became a Springbok. I made my debut against Scotland at Murrayfield. Yeah. And that's where I needed to make a shift. But it wasn't a perfect role. I can tell you lots of things that happened. I'm sure we're going to get into it. Yeah. There were times I went into a comfort zone being an international player where I lost my spot. We're going to talk about that. But when I realized I could make it, I started grafting. I really started grafting. I was not the most skillful player, all right? But my superpower, as you could call it, was that tenacity, that never say die, that will to prove everyone wrong. Not prove everyone, but more to myself, that fight inside me that I could achieve anything.
Yeah, and I talk about that a lot because, it's having the will and the commitment, the will over the skill. Because you can have all the skill in the world, but if you've got no will and no commitment, it's a waste of time. So for you sound like, you're just really dedicated and just hard work, never quit kind of attitude.
So I have something which I live by, and it was all taught to us at school. And this was our headmaster. He was a real old school headmaster. So when he would speak at assembly, he would approach us. We were called boys hires because we were Paul Boys High. He said, boys hires, you need to remember this. We are always first amongst equals. We are first amongst equals. And what he was trying to say that we represented something different. It was about sportsmanship, good conduct, good scholarship. And those values were embodied into our first team. And we had this first team coach, and he gave us the speech one day. And he said, guys, the will to want to win must be greater than the fear of losing.
Yeah.
And he says, remember that. The will to want to win must be greater than the fear of losing. And I took that. Not so much about winning. It wasn't about winning for me. It was like, okay. And I changed that. And I said, the will to want to achieve something great must be bigger than the fear of not achieving it.
Yeah, I like that. Really like that. I'm going to take that out as a quote.
Right there, Coach G.
Oh, don't worry. You'll be tagged in it. You'll be tagged in it. I mean, a couple of things, because I want to talk about, like, obviously, you become a professional rugby player. It is easy to go off the rails. I talk about this with all sports professionals. It is easy. You're in the limelight. You're put on a pedestal by quite a lot of people. I want to talk about that, what happened for you, and also about your injuries, because you did have a number of injuries, probably ones that you shouldn't have come back from, but you did. So let's do the first one, going off the rails. Did you go off the rails? Was it, because obviously, like I say, you're adored by thousands of people, millions of people, and it's easy to get sidetracked.
No, that pressure's a lot. And sometimes, and I'm the first to admit that there was a stage I was arrogant. I was full of myself, and I was an idiot. It happens. I'm not justifying that. But luckily I had people around me that brought me back where I needed to be. But yeah, dealing, I got injured. My first massive, it's not actually a massive injury, but more the length. So in 2004, I made my debut for South Africa. 2005, I started for South Africa at Ellis Park, playing against Australia. So I was like finally making my mark, and I had the opportunity to meet Nelson Mandela before the game, massive, unbelievable. And I remember going down the tunnel, I'm getting goosebumps again, going down the tunnel, and we're about the president sitting there on this golf cart, and I'm going out to shake his hand. And he says to me, "Oh, it's so good to see you, Os." And I'm like, "I'm not Os." He was talking about the Lucid prop that played in the 95 World Cup. And I was like, "Good to see you too, Mr. President."
You did
I didn't even correct him. I was just like, and it became a big joke. Like for months, the players are like going, "Oh, Os, how are you doing, Os?" But anyway. So then after that, I toured. We went on the Tri Nations tour, and I got injured. I broke my scaphoid in my wrist, which is a fickle thing, little blood circulation. And I just didn't recover. The bone would not heal. And I need that to lift in the lineouts.
Yeah.
And for 2 years, I was sidelined. I had 2 operations, and I was told not to do any physical activity. I needed to keep my arm as still as possible, just even walking.
Wow.
They told me, "Do not move." I had went for oxygen tanks to help to speed up the process. I had sonar machines on my hand, all these type of things. And I lost myself because I was no longer part of a team. Being a professional player, I would be sitting at home ordering takeaways. We had this takeaway service back then called Delivery King. So pizzas would come to my house. I'd be watching the whole series of Friends. And I picked up weight without even realizing. I knew I was picking up weight, but I thought, okay, 7 kgs, 8 kgs. Until in the end of 2006, I had to go see a nutritionist as part of the Springbok group, which before we getting ready for the World Cup.
Yeah.
And I got on the scale, and I normally weighed about 120 kgs. I got on the scale, and I weighed 142 kgs.
Wow.
22 kgs overweight. And I'm like, nah, there's something wrong. Get me. I was like rude with the nutrition. You get another scale. That one's bug. You're not going to give that weight to my Springbok coach. You're going to mess me up. She got another scale. Got up on the scale. 142. I said, nah, there's something wrong. Get me another one. She got me a third one. 142.
Wow.
Sat me down, said, "Mr. Steenkamp, I think you have a problem."
Yeah.
And reality sunk in. And then I had to start preseason, went to Springbok training. Media mocked me because I was running. Imagine 20 kgs of excess, and I don't have the biggest legs. All right. Yeah. I've got skinny legs, got this big chest, and everything. There was just this bundle of joy all over me, right in the midsection. All right. And I was not allowed to train with the team. People would say I would never make it back. 2007, or it was 2006.
Yeah.
And I had a decision to make. Was I willing to do what is necessary to come back? And I got called in by my union coach, the Bulls, who was later the Springbok coach as well, Heineke Meyer. And he said to me, "Gee, we need to have a talk about your future." And I was like, "Oh, it's going to cut my contract."
Yeah.
And he called me and said, "Okay, clearly you're 20 kgs overweight. So I want to challenge you. You've got 3 months to lose that weight. If you lose it in 3 months, you will start every single game for this team. Every single game. And I'll give you an extension on your current contract." And I was like, wow, okay, I didn't expect that. So obviously I went to go see the S&C coach, And he just looked at me, just shook his head. He says, G, we got a long road ahead, but are you in? I'm like, Basil, you tell me what to do, when to do it, and I'll be there. I train 5 times a day. 5 times a day on my own. And we had to weigh in every day. Wow. And I would go 142, I would stay 141.9. And I remember when I broke 140, I was shouting and screaming. I'm like, and everyone was like, what's going on? What's going on? How much weight did you lose? He's like 5Ks, 10Ks. I'm like, no, I lost 2.1. I'm 139.9.
Getting in that new bracket, 130.
Yeah. And I was not allowed to train with the team because I was seen as a health risk. Wow. So I had to run on the side of the field while my teammates were training on the field. And I had this hooker. He played for Harlequins back in the day called Gurthrö. And as soon as I would start running, he would start making these sounds. Let's go, G. You better run, boy. He was squealing like a pig. And that got me. And I thought, okay, the first time I let it go. The next day I would come back, run. Let's go, G. He did that for 3 months.
Wow.
And I hated him. I hated his guts. And we became best friends because that was his way to push me. Because after 3 months, I dropped all that weight.
Yeah.
And I started every single game for the Bulls in Super Rugby from 2007 till 2011. Over 60 consecutive starts, which is still today a record at that team, which you won't get in modern day rugby anymore. Yeah. So, that was one of my stories.
That's an incredible story of, your determination and to come back from that injury and to then lose 20 kgs in, 3 months. That is incredible. And that just shows your willingness and your commitment, to do it and to do whatever it takes, by the way, because it sounds like you had to. So what happened with South Africa? Because obviously that was 2005, 2006. And that was a challenge by your Bulls coach who obviously, what happened with the Springboks around that time then? Because
I was and I was very fortunate. Jake White being the Springbok coach, he showed confidence in me and he kept me in the loop. He could have put me aside as well. He trusted me. I had a role to play for the World Cup. And I came back into the Springbok frame, and played test matches. We played England 3 times before the World Cup, and I started every single one of them. Unfortunately, I did not play in the final, but I played in the World Cup. We always say in South African rugby, when we play for South Africa, you need to put the jersey first, because the jersey represents something greater than us. It represents a nation. And if you're not South African, you won't understand it, because rugby has the ability to unite people. I've seen it over and over. 95 World Cup. When the Springboks are performing, people forget about their differences, their cultural differences. And I was fortunate enough to be backed by 2 coaches who were Heineke Meyer, all right, and Jake White.
Yeah.
And if I was in any other setup, and I didn't have a coach that backed me, my career would have been over. And when I challenge a lot of coaches today, because in the modern day game, we have lost that notion of being a real coach. I always ask coaches this when I host workshops for coaches: are you a real coach? It's like, yeah, I'm a real coach. I do the work, do the strategy. I'm like, are you a real coach? Do your players respect you? Do they trust you? I don't know. Do you know if your player has kids, whether he's married or not? Yeah, some of them, not sure about the rest. I said, there's your problem. How can you expect those players to go to water? How can you expect players to believe in your strategies if you don't have a relationship of trust? And I've seen it, and I see it. I work with athletes today that get dropped by their teams, they get cut by their clubs, because coaches do not see them as athletes. They see them as products.
Yeah.
Not good enough. I'll take something different. And that's the reality. That's the harsh reality of life today in the modern game.
Yeah, I see that through all sports, I work with, athletics, football, whatever, and yeah, they're a commodity at the end of the day. And you're great while you're of value to the team and everything, but something goes wrong, you get injured, whatever, the phone stops ringing, right, very quickly. So it's very difficult. I want to ask you about that, leading on to you. Obviously, after you win the World Cup with South Africa, being part of that amazing team, and you went on this amazing run with the Bulls, but to your career coming to an end, what was that like for you? Was it kind of like, were you strategically planning how the end would be for you, or were you prepared for that?
So obviously I only retired 10 years later after the World Cup. So, I still had a massive journey going ahead, and I don't think we have enough time to cover everything, but I'm gonna share this with you. I'm gonna fast forward more towards the end of my career.
Yeah.
So in 2014, I probably had one of my worst games for South Africa against Argentina. This was my opportunities 1 year before the 2015 World Cup. That would have been my third World Cup, which I would have gone to. And unfortunately for me, I had my worst performance ever. And when I got back to France, so I was traveling with the Springboks. When Argentina came back to France, I was about to play for my club in Toulouse. And when I arrived, my agent came to pick me up at the airport. And I found that a bit odd. Why is my agent picking me up, not my family? And I didn't think too much about it. We sat in the car and he said to me, "Gee, I need to tell you something. Your club wants you to leave." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "I got 2 years left on my contract. My family has relocated to France. We settled here." It's like, okay, process it. And I was driving home, and I need to share this with my missus after being away for about 8 weeks.
Yeah.
That the club doesn't want me to stay. Contractually, they couldn't just force me to leave. But I mean, if the club doesn't want you, they don't want you. What do you need to do? What do you have to do? Anyway, so first day back at training, I thought, okay, not too much. And actually, the coach came to me, "So, gee, have you found another club yet?" I'm like, "I just got back. This is my first day. Gosh, give me some time to figure it out." It's like, okay, no, it's fine, understandable. Went back the next day to training. "So, gee, have you found a club again?" Day number 2. And every single day, that coach came to me and his recruitment team came to me, "Have you found a club yet?" They want me to stay because they saw that performance. I didn't perform poorly for my club, but they saw what I was doing for my country. Like, we don't want that here. Anyway, so I had to make a decision. My family's in Toulouse, everything. I needed to change. I needed to have a hard reset. And for 2 months, and I always use this phrase, I played with a gun against my head, a knife against my throat, and a bazooka somewhere else, which I'm not going to mention where it is. And I knew at some stage one of them had to go and I would be done. So that was the amount of pressure that I experienced. And I pushed forward. I trained hard and I was a mission. And I carried my team those 2 months. I was my best rugby. And then after the 2 months, the coach came to me and said, "So I know I told you I want you to leave, but I've changed my mind. You're performing better, so you can stay. It's okay." I'm like, what the heck? And obviously getting to know the coach, I have a lot of respect for him. It was probably his way to light fire up in my ass and get me back. And to give you a bit of context to the story, so I was dominated in the scrum. And today it's my job to teach other players how to dominate the scrum. And often people are like, "How can you got stuffed up a few times in your career?" It's like, yes, but that's why I know how to get back. I've always come back from those poor performances. I have a framework. I've got a process which I go through, which I'm teaching you. And that's also the danger of sharing stuff on social media. You get these idiots. I got actually a message yesterday from a guy in New Zealand that actually sweared at me using the F word and stuff. I'm like, "Oh, be respectful. You can criticize me. That's okay. I don't mind. I can handle it. That's your opinion." But anyway, and this guy, Ramiro Herrera, played for Argentina. He stuffed me up back then. And I used this video. I actually used the scrum in my online courses, and I show players the scrum. So I show the scrum like on a regular basis. And I said, in the beginning, I took it upon myself. I wasn't good enough. I performed badly. And looking back now at it, years later, I'm like, okay, but that guy didn't pull his weight. That guy didn't do that. Yes, I did that wrong, but it wasn't just me. So I'm explaining to players, you keep yourself accountable. But anyway, I don't want to go too much in detail. So now I'm playing in Toulouse, playing in France, and I get to face Ramiro Herrera again in the French championship. So I'm ready for that game. I'm amped up, did my homework, did my drills. I'm ready to smash. So captain's run the day before the game in the gym, doing my activation. And the coach comes to me, say, hey, G, do you know you're playing against this weekend? I'm like, what question? He's like, yeah, no, yeah. It's the player that effed you up. I'm like, come on. I'm in a good space. And long story short, I smashed him in that game.
Yeah.
I smashed him. And I share that story because I came back from being dominating to being the one dominating in the scrum.
Yeah.
And that story is important because, and this is my strategy, you need to find out the source of what's holding you back.
Yeah.
And only then you can put a proper plan into place, because otherwise you're just working on the headless chicken. I see too many athletes. They say, I need an S&C coach. Okay. I need a mental coach. I need a nutritionist. I'm like, no, don't go spend unnecessary money if it's not something which is going to help you. Why should you spend money on a nutritionist if you're eating healthy? If you're looking after yourself, what is the one thing that is holding you back, that is stopping you from performing? Identify that, and then you get the help that you need.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's amazing stories. And coming back to your question in terms of planning, I planned. I knew I wanted to become a coach. I knew with everything that I experienced as a player, I wanted the player not to avoid it, but I want them to reduce the mistakes. I want to have the tools. Okay, I had a poor performance. How do I fight back? Not just technical, but mentally. What's the process? And I share this with athletes. And I knew it. And I wanted to extend my career. I wanted to play till 2019. And I did functional patterns, functional training, all these type of things. And I was ready.
Yeah.
But once again, my club made a decision. They're going to let go of all the goats. It's time to leave. All right. We new generation, which I understood. There were no harsh feelings about it. But then I had to ask myself this question: do I want to continue playing and reload my family to another country again, just so I can continue? So I decided to stop 2 years earlier than expected. So in that hindsight, I wasn't really prepared, but I had to adapt quickly.
Did you adapt quickly though? Because obviously a lot, like I said before, a lot of players in all different sports don't adapt quickly, and that's why they have issues and lots of problems come after the career. But for you, that was easier than for some. Like I say, a lot of people get into trouble at that point.
It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy because it wasn't planned. I didn't finish on my terms, so I first had to get over that. For example, I didn't want to go to a rugby game. I didn't want to watch rugby.
No.
I wanted to coach in rugby, but I was in that space. I didn't want to watch rugby or go to rugby events. And I actually got a friend that dragged me along to a game, and he got me over that hurdle. But I knew what I want. I knew what I could do for players. And this is now where the business side came in. How do you promote what you do?
Yeah.
Nobody taught me this. I did a business management course. I've heard of this nonsense, blue ocean, red ocean. I've heard the SWOT and all these type of things. But how do I speak to people? How do I contact them, like work with me? So I would go on social media. Hi, I'm Gurthrö Steenkamp. I can improve your Scrum. No one. And they're like, I don't understand. I'm a World Cup winner. Why doesn't no one want to work with me?
Yeah.
And after a while, I realized, okay, I haven't earned their trust as a coach.
Yeah.
I don't have credibility as a coach. I needed to start at the grassroots. I had to go to clubs. I had to take on players, showcase what I was doing, explaining what I was doing. And I was still getting it wrong for 2 years. It was only until a year and a half ago where I realized I use social media to get clients.
Yeah.
And I realized that I was doing it all wrong. Things like identifying their pain points, resonating with them, or they to resonate with me.
Yeah.
I changed my language. I just used to put out posts with drills and, okay, this is what I'm doing. And I would just say, okay, great. This drill can improve your posture. Cool. But when I start changing my language, like, you lose your shape in the scrum, you get smashed, you get dominated, you turn to the line, and the coach is ready to pull you off. How bad does that feel? I feel that. Do you want to avoid it? You know, those small type of things, which I didn't know. You know, how to communicate, how to get my marketing strategy, social media strategy, email marketing, all these type of things, which is important in business. As even though we are coaches, that's the downside of being a coach.
Yeah.
We are good at what we are doing, but actually to get in front of people in the beginning, we don't know how.
Yeah, it's not easy to begin with.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing I've learned is just to be yourself. You know, try and you show up, don't you, thinking you've got to be this and you've got to do it this way, and that felt very uncomfortable for me personally. And then I was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna be me. I'm just gonna be me and use my language. And if they resonate with it, they resonate with it, and it's worked.
That's it. You've got to be yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what I started doing. I started going live on social media, sharing what I was doing, sharing my journey. And when I started doing Zoo, people were criticizing me because in the rugby community, doing these animal movements, high intensity moves, like, what the hell are you doing? You're a freaking prop. And like, why did I? And I would like, yeah, that's fine. I was like, yeah, but that's stupid. It's a bunch of nonsense. And then I started showing what I'm doing. And they're like, see me dripping in sweat. I'm like, they're like, what the hell? And I was doing it at a daily basis for 6 months. I was going every single day doing this specific workouts and routines. And all of a sudden, players like, why are you doing that? I said, I'm developing mental resilience. I'm increasing my range of motion. I'm teaching this to the athletes that work with me. They've increased their benchmarks. They have beaten their personal records, their so-called KPIs. I don't believe in KPIs, but professional teams want them. They beat their Bronco tests, all those type of things.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, now we understand. And when I work with players, when I put them through brutal training, they don't question me because they often say, Coach, you train harder than us.
Yeah.
So they're like, I understand what they're going through. And often when I get to training, they're like, Coach, you're crazy. Like, I'm not crazy. I'm just inspired. I just want to push it.
What a great role model you are for those guys. So now you've obviously, you know, had this amazing career and you've set up your coaching now, which is doing really well. What are your sort of aspirations and goals for the future? Because you guys are all settled in France now. You know, what's your aspirations, I guess, for yourself in business and life going forward?
Obviously, I've acquired all these amazing tools, you know, in sport, in training, the way, and also the psychology of players. You know, I'm not a life coach. I'm not a mental coach. I didn't do the training for that, but I've got life experience. I can read people. I can make people feel safe. When they speak with me, they'll share stuff which they've never shared with everyone. I've had grown men cry in my session, sharing things with me.
Me too.
And, you know, obviously my goal is one day to be in charge of a professional setup. But I'm also planning another pathway as well, because in the world of rugby, you can be part of a professional team and like that, you are gone. Yeah. So I don't want to be in a situation that I was in as a player, end of contract, waiting to see when I'm developing my own thing. So that's why I'm in mental resilience. That's why I do Zoo. Yeah. You know, when lockdown hit end of last year, I was traveling all over Europe doing workshops. I was doing workshops for coaches, for players in rugby. I was doing team building in companies, bringing people together, opening lines of communication, building robust teams. I was doing all those things, doing Zoo. All of a sudden, boom, lockdown. You know what now? And then I started taking things online, which I always wanted to do. I've always had these excuses. I don't have the time. It's going to cost me 5,000, 8,000 euros for a website. And then I realized there's so many other great tools like Kajabi and ClickFunnels, which you can do on your own, Wix or WordPress, whatever. And then I started training online with rugby players. So what I did was online, I've got this team. It's called the Zoo Rugby Team. So Zoo is high intensity training, low impact. You've got to know that. For us, get a touch is very important. And I wanted rugby players to belong to something. They couldn't train with their teams. They couldn't train rugby. They had no access to equipment. So I said, stuff it. For 6 weeks, I'm going to host complimentary sessions for you guys to try. I trained with over 600 rugby players all over the world, professional and amateur.
Brilliant.
And I had no idea where this was going. No idea. And then after the 6 weeks, I said, okay, right, cool. Let's create a membership, right? Let's continue this journey. And I had over 50 that signed up with me. And today, and it's evolved, in April, we'll be 1 year old.
Brilliant.
1 year, called the Zoo Rugby Team. We train 3 times a week. And we share the values of rugby, cohesion, respect, honor, humility, truth, all those type of things. But it's evolved. In the beginning, it was for rugby players to stay conditioned. And then I opened it up. Now it's everyone. I did not change the name. A lot of people changed the name. I said, no, I don't care if you're a rugby player or not, but we will remain the Zoo Rugby Team. Because there's a lot of people that don't know what it feels like to be part of a team. I had later moms and dads that joined my team. And we got this story of a mom. She was in Paris. They're South African. And their contract came to him, but they were stuck in lockdown. And I was training with her husband, who was an S&C coach. And one day he said, gee, I need to confess to something. I'm like, what? He's like, my missus has been training with us in the shadow, but she's too shy to get on camera. I'm like, that's fine. Tell her just to train. And one day when she's ready, she can join us. And one day she pitched up. And what I do is building confidence as well, building self-esteem.
Yeah.
And I train with everyone. I don't stand, I do every single session. I do between 11 and 16 sessions a week, different people. And this, her name's Trudy. Then one day, boom, she's on the screen and she's training with us and she's going, she was struggling. She's a mom. She's a runner. She was a gymnast. So she's got some form, but she was struggling. And then all of a sudden, one day, now she was starting to move faster and she was catching up to me. Like, what the hell is going? And I need to go and I'm moving. And she just changed. She transformed.
Brilliant.
And then one day she messaged me, Coach, I want to do the Zoo certification. Can you arrange it? I'm like, yeah, sure. She did the online certification. Now she's a coach.
Brilliant.
She's running Zoo sessions online from someone training in the shadows, no confidence, and it's filtered into a business as well.
Brilliant.
She's an estate agent. And she's doing, and she's like the confidence, the transformation. Her friends is like, what did you do? Who did you see? What's the name of your psychologist? I didn't just see a psychologist. I just do Zoo.
Yeah.
And, but anyway, so that's the great thing. And now for me going forward, I'm developing this. I'm working close with the founder of Zoo, Nathan Halberg. I did not create this training method. It is his. I'm just honored and privileged to be a part of it and be part of his journey. So I'm helping Zoo now as well develop the initiative called Zoo Into. It's to empower 50 million people with movement and mobility.
Brilliant.
And it's simple. It's 30 seconds of frog squats, 30 seconds of bear crawls, 2 rounds every single day. And I've already shared it with so many members on Clubhouse. Yeah. And they're like, it's amazing. You probably know Jean-Pierre de Villiers, a South African, who's also a keynote speaker. I did it with them. I did a Zoo session. Actually, we actually just had a catch up. And I said, let me show you Zoo too. He went past horizontal on a squat, which he hasn't done in years. He said like, gee, it's amazing. Like, no, it's not. It's just Zoo. Yeah. So for me going forward, definitely I want to see how I can go into professional sports, but also I want to develop Zoo as well, helping more people, empowering more people with movement, because this Zoo training method, it doesn't just increase performance. It helps you to manage stress, anxiety, depression. I've gotten people, and I didn't even know about it, clients of mine were suffering from depression and they've stopped taking their medication.
Yeah. Movement, though, is so powerful. I talk about it a lot. And, I work with some people that are not athletes, high achievers, and movement is such a part of, if you're going to work with me, you've got to move your body. you've got to find your thing that works for you. So I'm going to have to check out Zoo and see what this is all about now, Coach.
I'll send it to you, don't worry.
Please do. I'm really conscious of time. And there's so many things I want to talk to you about, because I don't think we've even hardly touched on the mindset stuff, and we've been going.
We'll get on to a part 2, all right?
Let's do a part 2.
All right, part 2. All right, we can create a series.
Sam and Coach G series. I really want to talk more about the mindset stuff and resilience a bit more, but and hopefully you will come back on, and if you're up for it, maybe I'm a bit passionate about inclusion in sport, women in sport. I know obviously like you say, your father played football in apartheid era. Maybe open for a bit of discussion around inclusion and stuff like that, and equality in sport in part 2.
100%.
Brilliant.
No, that sounds good. No, I'm a big for that. I do like, especially with a lot of the women's rugby that was stopped due to the situation. I've reached out to a lot of them, and I tried to create some awareness around it as well, that they are athletes as well. It doesn't mean because we as men that we are professional that we should get preference. It's important. We are all equal.
Exactly.
We're all human beings, whether you're male or female. I've worked with so many women that are so much stronger than most of the men I know. So, honestly, I'm happy if I can help you with that in any way, create some more awareness.
That'd be great. Yeah, well, let's have a part 2, and we'll do inclusion, we'll do mindset, and we'll do brilliant.
Yeah, time goes by, it's like ridiculous.
Thank you, Coach G. Really appreciate it.
You've been listening to the Real Life Sports Show. I hope you found some value in this free podcast. If you have, then tell someone else about it. And while you're at it, why not leave me a 5-star review? Also, you can share it on your socials. You'll mostly find me on Instagram at Sam Adams Coach. Use the hashtag #RealLife. You can also check me out at my website, sam-adams.com. If you're interested in my coaching or have any comments at all, then just drop me a DM via Instagram and I will get back to you. I look at all my messages and I reply to every single one of them.